Okay, so this is the last lecture of this Going Public course within the PhD School of Politecnico di Milano. And actually, it's my last lecture. You will have another lecture on Friday from the science journalist that you will meet. But in my last lecture, I would like to talk about something that may seem a bit ambitious, so the truth. Actually, it may seem an ambitious title, but actually what I will talk about is the concept of complexity that I already introduced you, the idea of public engagement and what could be the role of communication and also of design in this public engagement towards complexity. So that's the topic of the lecture today. And is also based on a true story. Actually, it's based on my story. It's also an attempt. It's like a meta lecture. So it's also an attempt to share with you what is my research activity, what we do in our research lab, and is an attempt from my side to share this as a narration, so as a story that I hope will engage you with my research topics. So you may remember what I told you about my research path. So everything started from these books and the fascination for this idea of complexity. Actually, if I have to find a keyword for my research domain today, probably this would be something like a data visualization, but actually this is not where I started. If I'm doing what I'm doing now, it's not because of data, not because of visualization alone, but because I got fascinated by this kind of books and this kind of concept, so the idea of complexity. And also because on a certain point I realized through this research initiative, the Atlas of Cyberspaces, where people were trying to collect the first maps of internet. We are around the end of the 90s. And I discovered that visualization could have been an extremely powerful tool to represent the complexity I was interested in that time. So this is where I started, and I think this could be the starting point of my lecture today, because what I want to share is why this concept and this idea of communication could be useful also, I think, for you in engaging with a broader public with your research topics. So when I saw that, I thought that really one of our mission could have been the one to make complex phenomena accessible, visible, and understandable for people. Actually, probably I had already in mind this idea of engaging with someone else, and probably this relates with my discipline, that is design, that is always something that is projected towards someone else. So, but that was my starting point, and at that time, actually, the idea of complexity was something not really diffused, but was for me something like a life-changing discovery. Actually, complexity is a relatively recent concept, so it's something that was not available before the 40s of the 20th century. So after the Second World War, someone discovered, let's say, this idea, but before this concept in a way was not available, so to speak. But what was available was a precise idea of what the truth is, or the truth was, actually. And the truth that was available at that point, so before the idea of complexity, is the Cartesian truth, is the truth of the Cartesian method that you may remember for your previous educational steps. If you remember, the method of Cartesio and the car is a method that has a specific goal. Do you remember the title of that book? The subtitle, actually, that is a discourse on the method for reasoning well and for seeking truth in science. That was the idea of the truth before the discovery of complexity that changed, in a way, my research career. And this idea of truth is based, you may remember, on clarity and distinction, is based on the idea of avoiding or excluding as much as possible any doubt, and on the idea of separating in small parts the problem that you have to solve and the problem you have to tackle with. It's something that is very well written in the laws, in the rules of the Cartesian method. The first rule that says that you don't have to accept anything for true which you did not clearly know to be such, or the fact that you don't have to comprise nothing more than is presented to your mind clearly and distinctly, and so you have to exclude any doubt. Or the second rule that is talking about, as I said, about distinction and separating the problem into parts, as many parts as possible, and divide and analyze all these parts individually. Actually, this was the idea of the truth, an idea that was shared before the Cartesian method by Galileo and then by Newton, and actually this is the foundation of the scientific method I think most of you is still practicing. So the basis of the scientific revolution is in the Cartesian idea of the truth and the analysis of the world outside. This is the basis of modern sciences. Up to the 40s, as I said, of the 20th century. Then something happened. Someone, a mathematician, but also a philosopher, most of the people around that time, they were both mathematicians, scientists in a way, and philosophers together. That person is Norbert Wiener, that around the 40s, after the Second World War, started thinking about a new way of understanding how social, technical systems work outside. And it made that through an interdisciplinary initiative that is called cybernetics. That's where the idea of complexity started. And it started with not by chance, with an interdisciplinary attempt. So gathering people from different disciplines, it was not alone, it was together with other scientists, and with a clear idea of understanding not only how system like social, natural, and technical system works, but also what is the impact, what is the relationship. It's not by chance that you have cybernetics and society in the subtitle of one of his books. So it's all about, the relationship between elements, the feedback between within this relationship, how elements in the system interact, and what are the consequences of these interactions and these feedbacks between elements. This is something that is well described and in a much more, let's say, affordable way in this book that I already shared with you, that is part, again, of my career when I was an architect. And as Barabasi wrote in this book, this idea of complexity, of interrelation, of interconnectedness and feedback is something that is shared by all the systems. So it's social, natural, technical system is business, science, and everyday life. So this new idea is something that is shared by all, we can say, the phenomena we are observing outside. It is something that has to do also with how the brain works. So this is one of the members of this interdisciplinary initiative run by Norbert Wiener. So Ross Ashby was a physiatrist, and he was dealing with how the brain works, and it created the foundation to what we call today artificial intelligence. And what is interesting to me, being an architect and a designer, is that in this interdisciplinary attempt to understand in a new way the world, architecture and design were part of the game. I don't know, maybe the architects here, they know Christopher Alexander and the work he did around this idea of pattern language. That is something that comes from the computer, that was one of the foundational elements of the interdisciplinary initiative of Norbert Wiener. So this idea of having a new type of architecture that was based on the idea of complexity and the ideas of cybernetics of Norbert Wiener and all the others. And maybe you don't know what is the origin of what you may know now today as the MIT Media Lab. Do you know this research lab? Do you know what is the origin? How it started, actually? It started as a an architectural research lab within the architecture department at MIT with a name that I think is, again, interesting, is the Architecture Machine Group. Actually, it was about trying to apply the ideas of cybernetics and artificial intelligence that it was growing within architecture. So the idea of creating machines that could learn how to design buildings or learn how to design buildings. So this architecture machine was the foundation of the MIT Media Lab. And actually is something that is stemming out from the ideas of cybernetics, complexity, and artificial intelligence. So this is the research foundations of my path, and I think is something that brought me actually also here teaching to you something about public engagement with research, because you will see there are many connections to these ideas. So if I'm now teaching also about public engagement and communication for science and research, is because I think I understood something about these new concepts and these new approaches also to science and research. So maybe it's not a surprise that I've been then fascinated by the encounter with another person that really changed, I would say, for the third or fourth time my approach and my research career. Actually, that person is Bruno Latour, and it's a kind of a hybrid person. It's not easy to focus or to define actually what is his discipline. But if you look at Wikipedia, it describes Latour as a French philosopher, anthropologist, and sociologist, and especially known, says Wikipedia, for the work in the field of science and technology studies. And after teaching at the École des Mines in Paris, where he was teaching sociology of innovation, it may tell you something about public engagement. And he then moved to Sciences Po Paris for directing the media lab there. He was scientific director up to 2017 when he retired, actually. He was also a centennial professor at the London School of Economics. That's what Wikipedia says about him. But why is interesting? Bruno Latour and the relationship we had with him in this course that is related to complexity, public engagement, communication, and design. Actually, he's a person that is, it explored with a different perspective, a perspective that is pretty much related to complexity and the ideas also behind cybernetics, I think, how science works, basically. So his idea was to apply sociology to science and understand how the behavior of science and scientists, in order to understand how the scientific knowledge is constructed. Actually, what is important is this shift from science to scientific knowledge. Because for him, what is important is how the scientific knowledge is created and is built, because actually is built. So it's not static. Scientific knowledge is not something that is written in stone, it's not stable, it's something that is constantly changing and is built. So it means that there's someone building it, and this someone is a plural entity. And what he says is that there is a competition between different hypotheses. So there is no one scientific knowledge. Or better, the scientific knowledge is the result of a dynamic that is a dynamic of competition between different ideas. Then on a certain point, there is one that is winning in a way that becomes the current scientific knowledge we, let's say, believe to go back to the truth and what it is. So it's very close to some ideas like the one of Walsham in 1997 when he wrote something like this, that you can imagine was very different from the idea, the Cartesian understanding of truth, or the concept of truth that he was pushing together with Newton and the other that created the modern science. That is not, Walsham wrote, and never will be a best theory. So what is the truth? Theory is our chronological inadequate attempt to come to terms with the infinite complexity of the real world. Complexity again, and our attempt to cope with complexity creating a theory. But that theory is not stable, as Latour was saying. It's dynamic, it's a construction that changes over time. Our quest is a quest, should be for improved theory. So it's something that improves, changes constantly, not best theory, and for theory that is relevant to the issues of our time. To be honest, I'm not expert of these topics. I'm just sharing with you, probably with not with the proper words and the proper way, what I learned, reading some books and having this fascination for complexity. But that perspective is something that I really want you to go back with, is one of the takeaways from this course about going public and public engagement with science and research. So Latour was working in this idea of the social motivations, the idea of the acceptance of a scientific theory. So it means a social acceptance of scientific theory. It means that if there is a theory that wins in this competition, if it's a competition between different ideas, the one that wins is the one that is socially accepted. Does it sound with what we said at the beginning of the course? It should be. This competition is dynamic. So there is a dynamic competition, we can call it negotiation, between the actors that are building the scientific knowledge he was interested in. And this is clearly connected to what the European Union is suggesting to you in their text. So what the experts in the European Commission they write is really close to that perspective that I learned through my studies in architecture and then what came after in my research career. I'm picking up some slides from the first lecture of this course. Do you remember when we said that research activities are a specific type of social activity that it is embedded in a wider societal context? Do you remember that slide? Isn't that exactly what Latour, and before Latour, the ones that started with the idea of complexity were talking about? Cybernetics and society. They were immediately trying to understand what is the impact of the new approach they were pushing for in the society. Do you remember that other slide? The important decisions which involve scientists' work are no longer made by the scientific community alone. We are not alone. As I said, the actors that build scientific knowledge are, according to Latour, but according to the European Commission nowadays, plural. It's plural. It's a number of different actors that build or that make a certain idea, a certain theory, in the words of the author we saw before, winning on the others. It's a competition, it's dynamic, it's negotiation. There is one theory that wins, one idea that wins in this competition, and this is because social acceptance, so it's something that is shared among different actors, and it's something that we can't do alone. That's, I think, very important for our discussion around public engagement. More and more, the European Commission is saying, since years, that more and more the science and research is about complex negotiation with a number of social groups. It's exactly a derivation, is something that stems up out of the work of the people I was mentioning before. And then it's really something connected to what people then perceive. Do you remember the Eurobarometer survey they made with citizens, and what citizens answer when you ask about trust and science. So they know, maybe better than us outside, that we are not alone, that we are dealing with other actors. Companies, for example. They know that some of our research activity is funded by companies, that we maybe had a negotiation with these companies in order to make our hypothesis, our idea, our theory more stronger in this competition within and between our other ideas. So people outside, they know, and they say, we can't trust that much scientists and researchers, because we know that they are part of these dynamics of negotiations. They probably have relationships that can make their theory or their ideas stronger or weaker. But you know, that's very important for our discussions around public engagement. Actually, these dynamics, these relationships are very difficult to see and to get, because most of the theories, most of the scientific ideas, they are, we can say, black boxed. If you think to some of the most important theories nowadays, you can't really see what is within it. I mean, you can't really see what is inside. They are really like black boxes. Science and technology is full of black boxes that most of these actors that are supposed to build it or to share it or to participate in this dynamic negotiation I was talking about, they are not able, in some cases, to see it and to be part of it because they don't perceive how it's working, what are these relationships and how these dynamics work. But Latour, the philosopher, the sociologist of scientific knowledge, he thinks that there is a chance to look inside these black boxes. And this chance is called controversy. Controversy is an opportunity, and when we have a controversy, we can have a chance to look inside the black box of science and technology. Controversy creates like a hole, a breach, where you can try to enter into the black box of scientific and technological ideas and theories, and then try to understand what is actually the dynamic of negotiations that brought this idea into the first position. What is the relationship, the network of relationships that brought this idea, that made this idea winning, this theory winning on the others? Controversy is, in the words of Tommaso Venturini, one of the scholars of Latour, are situations where actors disagree, or better, agree on their disagreement. There are different actors that realize that they are not alone. They are, in a way, they have different opinions, different theories, different ideas, and then they have, in a way, to compete, to negotiate. First, they recognize each other. They know that there is someone else dealing with the same topic, with the same, doing research in the same domain, and realizing, that they realize that there is this kind of competition. Controversies begin when actors discover that they cannot ignore each other, and then actors manage to work out a solid compromise, negotiation compromise. This is a complete new perspective on research and science. Is compromise, is negotiation, is dynamic, is not the truth that we knew before. Complexity came in and changed the perspective. And these dynamics, these negotiations have a shape. And you may guess what is the shape of these negotiations, of these dynamics. What do you think is the pattern, is the shape of this negotiation? It has to do again with complexity. What is the shape? What is the pattern? It's a network. All the phenomena we observe are made out of dynamics, of relationships, and these relationships have the shape of a network. And of course, this is something that relates to the idea of complexity, the interconnectedness of complexity. And again, this is something that Latour was pushing a lot, this idea of understanding the construction of scientific knowledge as a dynamic process through analyzing the behavior of all the actors, the negotiation, the relationship, through the pattern of a network. Actually, it builds on top of the actor network theory, and that's the way he uses in order to understand how scientific knowledge is constructed. Again, as I'm not an expert on this field, that actually has a name, is STS, Science and Technology Studies, I use the words of other people in order to describe you, to be a bit more precise on this premise that I'm building around public engagement and communication. So what is actor networks? In the words, again, of another author, Carroll, actor network theory suggests that the world is made up of intertwining networks, which are comprised of many complex interactions which constantly reconfigure itself on a regular basis. It's a dynamic relationship between different actors, complex interactions between actors that build or makes a certain theory, a certain idea winning over the other. And not all the actors that participate in these negotiations are equal. Some of them are stronger, some of them are weaker, some of them get more attention, some of them can have more consensus, some of them are closer to society, some are not close. Think to climate change, for example, is one of the controversies, is one of the controversial scientific knowledge bodies I would talk about to you. It's true, I think, that in this field, not all the actors are equal. There is a very nice picture I found in a presentation. I think it is, again, from Tommaso Venturini, or maybe from, I don't know if it was from the internet. I think it summarized very well this idea of not all the actors being equal. Do you remember, do you know that actor? Actually, he's one of the actors of the controversy around climate change. There is something happening to that beer. But it's true that if you search what is the beer that is most known in the idea of climate change, is not the brown beer, it's the polar beer. Just search on internet, go on Google search and write beer and climate change. You will not see the brown one. That's what you get. I'm not saying white or polar beer, I'm saying beer. And why the polar beer is stronger as an actor in the construction of the scientific knowledge, why he wins on the brown one. Because if you go on the media, that's the beer they are talking about constantly. It's not the brown one, it's the white one, it's the polar one. That's why it's stronger, and people search for it and not for the brown one. But can we say that the polar one is more affected by climate change? Are we sure about that? Maybe not, but it's more close to what society perceives about climate change. Not all the actors are equal. So what can we do? And that's something that we as designers are doing, and this is part again of my research activity and something that I want to share with you because I think it's important could be relevant to understand how really scientific knowledge is constructed and what means public engagement. What we have to do is to observe these dynamics and to represent these dynamics in order to make these dynamics of negotiation, these dynamics of powers in a way, understandable by the actors that are part of it. Because as I said, in most of the cases, this is all black boxed. Nobody can see within it. But when you have a chance, you have a controversy, you can use this all to enter and to see what's happening and to represent what's happening in order to make people understanding. And I will give you some examples of that. It's an activity, this observation and description of these dynamics of negotiation between different actors in order to build, to make the idea or the theory stronger. This activity is called Cartography of Controversy. this is what we did in the past together with Latour and some other researchers. And this is something that I think can give you a clear idea of what means social acceptance, what means public engagement, what is the importance of communication for this dynamic equilibrium around scientific knowledge. And actually, this work of cartography is pretty close to what cartographer used to do in the past. You know, in the past, there was no clear distinction between the cartographer and the explorer. Actually, the cartographer was the explorer. The explorer went to the new territory, drew a map, then he went back home with this map, then a new explorer left in order to reach that place with the map, and then he produced a new, more refined, more accurate map, and then he or she, mostly he, went back with a new map, and so on and so forth. So this idea of representing the territory and going back and then coming again on the territory with a new map is something that is very close to what is cartography of controversies. Go there in the controversy, try to understand how all the actors are relating each other, what are they doing, what kind of relationship and communication they share, and then you represent it. And then you bring this representation to the potential stakeholders, and then they understand, and they can go there and participate on the construction of the scientific knowledge, and then they can, again, be part of the game. It's basically reconstructing the geography of relationship and power that builds the scientific knowledge that is now winning as a theory, as an idea, over the others. So the purpose, of course, is not, as again, in the words of Venturini, is not to silence the discussion, as sometimes it happened in the past, with this idea of one truth that we have to seek, in the words of Descartes, but to show that there are many truths that deserve to be listened in order to understand which one is winning now and which is the relationships, which are the relationships and the dynamics behind that makes this idea winning on the others. So there is no one truth, basically. I can summarize this premise with this probably very strong assumption. So there is no one truth. There are many truths, many more truths that we can imagine. And you know, we can't skip that. Maybe we can focus, but we can't skip the fact that there are many competing ideas. And then you see that only when you have a controversy. That's the point of Latour. That's why we can use this chance, this opportunity to go in. Why we know that, for example, in climate change? Because there is a controversy. There is a debate. There are people debating, people discussing, people fighting in some cases. We can see that, we can represent that, we can create a map, we can do a cartography, and then we can expose, we can bring this representation to the stakeholders and use that as a chance to redraw the relationship and the network and, you know, maybe improve the theory, as the authors were saying before. It's not stable. It's something that can change if we know where we are, if we know how we relate to each other, if we know which are the dynamics that are in place in that moment. And of course, if it's like that, controversies themselves are complex phenomena. So, but they are complex because the phenomena are complex. So if scientific knowledge production is part of the society, society is complex, and so is complex the production of scientific knowledge and the way the actors that produce that interact with each other. So observation and representation, cartography of controversy should be, in a way, complex. Yes? Yeah, it's like, maybe I can use a metaphor. Think to a black box, something that you can't see. When a debate starts, so people are negotiating in a very active way, so there is no equilibrium. So there is no, let's say they didn't reach the compromise If there is no compromise, if there is no equilibrium, people start debating. So this debate creates like a hole, and then you can see the debate. Actually, controversy is observing a debate, a discourse, but it's a debate. In some cases, it's a fight that is happening that makes visible that within the black box there is a social construction of scientific knowledge. The controversy is the debate, so the people trying to reach the equilibrium they need in order to live together. You know, if they can't, they find until they find a compromise. But until they do that, before you have this space of where you can observe, and then you can reconstruct what are the actors and what are the dynamics. Thank you, because I think now it's more clear. So why is also linked to the idea of complexity? Because, I mean, this is something that also belongs as a property to the controversy itself. So when we see this debate around scientific knowledge, then the effort of people that try to represent these dynamics is not to reduce and to reduce the complexity, but to make sure that all the different actors, all the different positions, all the different relationships are visible. So what do? You observe. You observe these debates, this relationship, these dynamics, these communication flows, and then you represent them in order to make visible, as was my mission, when I started, make visible the complexity of these dynamics, and that are also the complexity of the social life scientific knowledge is part of. So observing a controversy, observing these debates when they take place, is like setting up a scientific observatory. So it's observing in a scientific manner in a way. And in this scientific perspective, what is important is the number of perspective and sensors in a way that you put in place. So in the idea of Latour, the higher is the number of sensors and monitoring devices that you put in place, the number of perspectives that you open, the higher is the chance that you come close to what could be called objectivity of this representation of the controversy. Actually, he claims for a second degree objectivity that is not made by having one clear perspective, one truth, but is made of the multiplication, of the points of view. So it's like entering in one phenomenon or in one black box from different points of entrance, having different holes and looking at from different angles, different perspectives, and then trying to reconstruct, to approximate the complexity of the real shape of this phenomenon. So bring as much subjectivity as possible in order to try to be objective in this second degree understanding. And that's where there is also from these people what I see as a call to action for designers. Because it's Latour himself that asks for the kind of tools that designers have that can be part of this attempt to represent the dynamics of a controversy. In one of his papers, in one of his writings, he really asks, in a way, us, is a question that is he's directly addressing to designers. So what are the visualization tools that allow the contradictory and controversial nature of matters of concern to be represented? So he's claiming for new tools, new visualization tools that can make these controversies, these debates, these relationships, these actors of networks visible in order to make people understanding what's going on and how they can participate, how they can engage with the construction, the social construction of scientific knowledge. he says as soon as we see the all, we have to enter and construct a visual, publicly inspectable space. That's what he searches for. I mean, it's entering into the black box and trying to make this, create like this publicly inspectable space. That's something that he couldn't do alone. That's why he asked for competencies like visualization that can be used to represent. So it's a matter of language, it's a matter of translation. That's something that we saw in this course. So how can we translate, use different languages, use visualization? Is something that can help us to understand what's going on in the field, in the research area we are working on. There is also another author that's more for designers, I mean, that is more or less in the same line. This Carl Di Salvo, in this adversarial design, it claims for a kind of a political role of design. And what he says is that actually the public, and this is something that could be of interest for you, I mean, public is not, again, a stable, solid identity. It's not the public. The public is a construction itself. It's something that is built by the dynamics of relationship that in society shape also scientific knowledge. And there are some tactics to try to understand or to shape even better the public. And one of these tactics is tracing, is something like observing, as Latour was saying. So making the condition and the consequences of an issue, of a scientific idea, of a research topic, apparent and known. So it's a matter of representation. So if we don't represent, if we don't show, if we don't display what is happening also around scientific topic, we can't participate in the production of new ideas of scientific knowledge. And inherent in tracing, Di Salvo says, is the activity of revealing, exposing the underlying structures, arguments, and assumptions of an issue. So revealing the conversation, the debate, the fight, in some cases, that is taking place and that leads one theory, one scientific idea, one topic to be stronger than others. What's happening? It's something that we have to trace, we have to create a map of, that's the Cartography of Controversy. We have to design, we have to shape this controversy in order to make it understandable and to make people able, different actors, to participate within it. For Carl Di Salvo, the right discipline to do that is communication design. So that's, of course, I'm a bit biased on that, but communication design is one of the actors, one of the profiles that can help in drawing these maps and understanding, make other people understanding, once we have the all, what's happening within some scientific topic or research topic. So information and graphic design is probably one of the best and most useful. Do you remember the lecture about diagrams? So these new shapes, new languages can help us in drawing the maps of this negotiation dynamics that build the scientific knowledge, or better, that make one idea winning on top of on the others. Actually, as I said, climate change is one of the probably most interesting controversies, and there are many different actors within it. I don't know if you have seen the documentary of Al Gore around climate change. What is his position on climate change and global warming? What do you think is his position? No idea? I think it's quite clear if you read the title, The Crisis of Global Warming. He's positive about it? I don't think so. This is the cover of the documentary, the poster. An inconvenient truth, if you can't read what is written here, that's clarify the position. So by far the most terrifying film you will ever see. What is his position? He's one actor. If there is a controversy, he's well positioned on one side. The ones that think that something very bad is happening. Is this the only position that we have? Is this the only theory or idea that we have nowadays on global change? He's a politician, maybe now a kind of, I don't know how to say, communicative person or media person. Is a very relevant influencer. What science think on the topic? Do you know? What is the very scientific, hard sciences? What I think? They are more or less on the same line. There is a research that says that 82% of the articles about climate change are framed in the context of disaster and uncertainty. Scientists more or less are on the same corner. So if we draw a map, now there is a debate, but there is a debate, so they are not all on the same corner. These are some of the people that are more or less close in our map that we're trying to draw in order to understand how the scientific knowledge about climate change is created. But then if you go to the media, sometimes you find covers like this one. Global warming is a hoax. Relax, global warming is all a myth. These are true covers, it's not invented. Even in Italy, Giornale is one of our newspapers. Ecco il pianeta surriscaldato. This is the warming planet. La balla spaziale. It's all fake. Global warming doesn't exist. And if you go again in internet, and then I will explain why I use often internet as a source for my arguments, try to search in Google. That's something I did. Real time. 2013, if you search global warming, is the autocomplete function of read what this says. Global warming is real, global warming is fake, global warming is not cool, is not real, it's false, is a myth, is a hoax. These are searches by people. You have people that have different angles and different perceptions. 2013, do you think it changed over time? 2015, it's hoax, is a fake, is real, is a myth, is not real, is a lie. 2018, this morning, same. So you have all, I think Google shows very well these different perspectives on the same. So clearly there are some people and the media, some of the media that are on a different position in the map. And what is the relationship between these actors? Do scientists speak with the media? Do media speak with the companies? Do Al Gore speak to who? What is the relationship? What are the relationships? What are the dynamics? Are they negotiating? They are negotiating. And so far, there is no winning theory. That's why the controversy is still there. It's open. Then you have also very strong actors. Do you know what is the position of that guy? Is another president of the United States. At that time, this is 2013, he was active, not being a president, on climate change in a very precise way. This very expensive global warming bullshit has got to stop. That's what I think. Having 2,400,000 followers. And that's, all the tweets that time they were, because in the United States they had in 2013 one of the coldest winter ever. Record snowfall and freezing temperature through the country. Where is global warming when you need it? So it's ironic. It's nice. But what happens nowadays? That he's the president of the United States and he's got 49.3 million of followers, not 2,400,000. Do you think he changed his ideas? No. He's not with Al Gore, he's totally in another position, and he's at 49 followers on Twitter that retweet, that follows, that comment. This is how we can construct the map of the networks and the negotiation dynamics behind it. This is negotiation. An article come out from the media, and then there is someone commenting, someone sharing on Twitter, this debate is the chance. On one side is a fight in a way, but it's also a chance we have to understand who are the actors, what are the relationships, who is driving the scientific knowledge, because they are driving the scientific knowledge. social acceptance of scientific knowledge that makes one theory winning over the others. And then you have, of course, you have official representative. These are other actors, so the governmental organizations that works. But as soon as you have these meetings with governmental organizations, then you have outside people protesting. So again, other distances, other positions, opposite positions on the map we are building about scientific knowledge. And if you go on Wikipedia, we use often Wikipedia as a meter for this controversy. You go on Wikipedia, this is a page. Actually, this is not the page, it's behind the page of climate change and global warming. You have a lot of discussion. This is the talk page behind global warming. People debating, deleting, adding text, and fighting in some cases on the same topic. There is even a page about the controversy on global warming, and people debating on the controversy about global warming. These again are negotiations taking place real time over the media. Actually, as I said, I'm not an expert of science and technology studies, so this is something that I learned meeting the books and the people I presented, I introduced to you, and especially the last one, Latour. And we met through a research project, actually. It was the 7th framework program. They did a first project, Sciences Po, in Paris, called MACASPO, Mapping Controversies on Science and for Politics. I think it's very clear, the subtitle. But then we met at the end of that research project, and then we did together the second one, e-maps, electronic maps to assist public science. So he claimed for designers, and then he got designers because we met, and then we started working together in this idea of controversy, cartography of controversy, so building the maps of these networks of actors, these dynamics, these negotiations that are making some ideas, some theories winning over the others in this social competition for social acceptance. So this is the project we worked with, and not by chance, to go back to the subject of this course, you may guess who funded this European project. Actually, it was the 7th framework program, and it was funded by the track Science in Society. Because the purpose of this cartography of controversies we were trying to do, the purpose of these electronic maps was to make the social construction of scientific knowledge more accessible by all the actors that could participate in orienting these dynamics. So we worked with them. We used the Google, as you may guess from what I said before, as a source of knowledge, because there are people, these are other researchers that we met in our path in Amsterdam, that think that if you look at Google, you can have a good proxy of what's happening in society. And it's more and more true as the number of users grows on these platforms. So we used Google as a proxy for society, and we started mapping the controversies and the networks of actors and their dynamics on some controversies. Sometimes we had to repurpose some of these devices, so manipulating some of these electronic devices like Google, Wikipedia, Facebook, they are very useful in order to understand the controversy and the debates. If you look through them, you can see all these debates and these discussions taking place. And we had a chance, we were, I think, very lucky, because in 2013, we had something that I can call like a perfect storm. Actually, in Sweden, in 2013, there was a meeting. One of the conferences about climate change took place, and then it was also the time, 2013, when the 5th assessment report of the IPCC, that is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, was released. So we had the chance to really be in the middle of the storm of the controversy. Because as soon as the IPCC produces this report every, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So we had the chance to be there when they released the 5th assessment report. And when this report is released, what happens is that the controversy sparks. I mean, it's something that make people, the actors, more active than in other occasions. And what the IPCC said in the press release when they released the report is that the assessment draws on millions of measurements which permit an unprecedented and unbiased, the question mark is mine, view of the state of the Earth system. So they made a research, an analysis, millions of billions of bytes of numerical data. So it's a scientific panel for climate change. We can say that they used big data, maybe something like that. And at the end, what they were releasing in 2013 is a summary for policymakers. So they do the research, years and years of research, and the first act is not release the entire report as a scientific report, but they release a summary for policymakers. So a very scientific summary is very few pages for making policymakers understanding. Because they know it's part of the public engagement discussion. So if you don't address your research first to the policymakers, nothing will happen. I mean, we can't have impact if we don't bring first our research, years of research, into the hands of policymakers. And what happened, as I said, when the IPCC releases a report in climate change is always an occasion for all the actors to start again discussing, debating, and fighting. So you could find articles like this one in the Wall Street Journal, dialing back the alarm on climate change. They said, it's an interpretation of the research, so they said they are dialing back, so it's no more an alarm on climate change. But then you have other sources, green style, that you can imagine, you can guess where they are positioned in the map. They say 10 years to save the planet. Report shock from IPCC. How could two media say so different, convey so different interpretations of the same research, the same report? Then you have another Italian media, Green Report, of course, is positioned in a certain way. Climate, the report from IPCC between, I don't know how to translate, there are some oaks, but it gives you an idea of what is the uncertainty around the topic. Climate models widely overestimated global warming, study finds. It's 2013, same period. Climate report, grave fears for state of the planet. Is grave or is not grave? Is an alarm or is not an alarm? This is the media. And then you have all the other actors that we were mentioning. And so the IPCC, that is an official actor, has to negotiate with these actors. So they have to release a statement that says, contrary to the articles of the media, the IPCC is not holding any crisis meeting. So they have to deal with these other actors and state what is their own position. So do you see this network of negotiation and dynamic relationship between all the actors involved in climate change? Do you think it's happening the same in your domain? Are you sure that is not black box and maybe you don't see that? There are many, many different areas, many different scientific and research domains that are like this one. But you don't see that, but within it, behind the black box, there are people negotiating, people trying to reach an equilibrium. That is a temporary equilibrium because something can change. Maybe a new regulation comes, maybe a new company with a disruptive technology comes, and then there is no regulation, so something changed, and then you have to revise your position. So are you sure that what is the status of your research domain? So, and even if you read the reports and the press release and the statements of IPCC, you understand, you feel this uncertainty. You feel that there is no clear truth as we were thinking before the area of complexity. Actually, it's a complex phenomenon. It's a controversy. And so you have to learn to live within this condition of uncertainty. The scientific evidence for anthropogenic climate change has strengthened year by year, they say, leaving fewer uncertainties about the serious consequences of inaction. So on one side, they say that there is no uncertainty in the seriousness of the consequences, but on the other side, they say that despite the fact that there remain knowledge gaps and uncertainties in some areas of climate change. So there is uncertainty. There is not uncertainty, there is uncertainty. So of course, as in many other cases, the research domain is not solid as it seems. And then it gives space, this uncertainty, of course, is something that gives space to what is called the skeptical, climate skeptics area. So you have people that are positioned in a very extreme way that says that, basically global warming doesn't exist. Skepticism about man-made, especially climate warming, global warming. So these counter actors, so you have the IPCC and you have the NIPCC on the other side. And this is how it works. So what can we do? So why Latour says that we as designers can do something? I give you a sense of it through a very small controversy within the climate change and global warming controversy. Is the controversy around Antarctic trips. Have you been to Antarctica? Well, maybe you have not, but many people are doing that. In the last 10 years, it increased 152%. It costs a lot of money. Probably is a nice experience. But as in the climate change and the global warming controversy, generally speaking, also in this one, there are different actors and different positions. On one side, you have the supporters. So people that support the idea of going there. And they have arguments. They are not, just for the sake of money. So they say that, of course, one of these actors is the people that organizes these trips. So the tour operators that bring you to the Antarctica. And they say that these cruises, they are green, they're completely sustainable, so there is no problem in going there. Other actors say that it's the last chance to visit this place. And maybe if you go there, if you see also the effect of global warming, maybe you will be more aware of it. So it's also a way to make people aware of this phenomenon. And then on the other side, of course, you have opponents. You have people that say, you can't do that. We don't have to do that. It's something that is not good. And they say, of course, that it just increases human activity. So it's something that maybe can bring awareness, but it also increases human activity. Increases pollution, is a threat for a local flora and fauna, and is also something, is bad for the environment. And what are the actors? So we started in that case searching for the actors. And we may say that these are the usual suspects. In most of the research topics and issues, you have the same actors. So you have companies, in that case, tour operators. What do you have? The scientific community, you, for example. We. The environmentalists, so we can say is activists in a way, maybe not necessarily scientists, but people, citizens, organizations, non-profit. Institutions. And what is missing? One of the classical actors that you can't skip if you want to really reconstruct the dynamics, the negotiation. Do you remember the polar bear? Why it was strong? It was strong because of one actor that is missing, that is the media. These are more or less all the categories you have always within a controversy. These are the main categories of actors that drive the controversy in a certain direction. So we started, again, using the web as a database to understand what are these relationships. And this is what we came out with, is a map. This is the cartography of controversy we made. We analyzed, this is one of the first maps we did. Actually, we made an atlas, meaning a lot of different maps for trying to understand the controversy. It's a map of the relationship between all the websites that in the web talk about global warming. The bigger the bubble, the higher the number of relationship with other websites. So if a bubble is big, it's because many other websites are linked to that bubble. The red ones, you may see, is research. So these are the research websites that speak about global warming and climate change. A lot of different websites. And they are positioned in a certain way. If we analyze the connections between the different websites, we see that, for example, tour operators are on the other side, especially some of them are very far from research. So if you want to speak with them, it's a long journey in a way. Then you have strong actors. These are some of the organizations of scientists. This is the organization of the tour operators. They are organized in a organization, and then it's bigger than all the other companies. And where are the environmentalists? The poor environmentalists are over there. They are very close to science. They are completely disconnected by the companies. Of course, they are on the opposite of that map. You can redraw the same connections in a different way, so you can see how big are the connections. Of course, governmental research and researchers and universities, but also the news. These researchers have very good connections with the news. That's interesting. So it means that probably they are able to push their ideas towards the media. These are the cruises. They are connected to research, not that bad. What is that? Institutions, very few connections. Then you can explore all the others, and then you have the environmentalists that have no connection at all, you see, with cruises. They are completely disconnected. But this is just one of the maps, as I said. You can use the web, then you look at all the websites, you scrape all the websites about organization and people talking about that topic, and then you create a map. But you can do the same within the academic domain. Do you think that we have a solid positioning of the academic community around cruises in Antarctica? It's not like that. And we discovered that browsing and scraping all the scientific articles on that topic in many different years. But it's very useful to understand what is the positioning nowadays and how it evolved, especially in time. This is the scientific network of all the actors. Every bubble is an author. The bigger the bubble, the highest is the number of relationship with other authors. That means also papers that they wrote together. So there is a clear hub. This Bauer, they are very big and also very well connected with many other authors. The map is created in order to have both the positioning, so you have promoters on one side and opponents on the others, because we not only scraped the articles, we read all the articles. And that's something that now we can do, maybe with some algorithms, with semantic analysis or textual analysis. Maybe you can understand something about it. But you have also time from 1980 to 2011. This is the time span we analyzed. And there is something that you can see if you go in time. What you notice is that, when it started, so below, it was mostly on that side. Then as you move up, it goes on another direction. Now is mostly opponents. There is a movement that goes from here to there through time. And also the discipline, if you aggregate all the authors by discipline, you see that there are some very strong promoters. You may guess there are some disciplines like business and management and law that are promoters in a way, so they are regulating in a way and managing the domain. And on the other side, you have different disciplines that in a way represent the opponents. Here you have, you may guess, environmental science, sociology, and geography. Okay, these are the maps that we produced. Who do you think can read this map and understand through the controversy how the scientific knowledge is behaving? Do you think that anybody can read these maps? Do you think that we can engage the public as we ask? You think yes, I think not. I don't think that people are able to read graphs. Not the society we want to engage with. Maybe of course, the scientific community, our peers, designers, they can read this chart and maybe understand. But what happens if I bring this to someone outside, to a citizen, and I want to, the person that goes to the Antarctica cruise trip, if I want to speak with them, do you think I can use these maps? No, I don't think so. So that's why we changed, and again, we translated these maps into a different artifact, changing language and using a different device. Actually, we made this analysis, we transformed this analysis into a video.
let's sort of break this guidance. Simply stay on the surface, and we'll be easily convinced. But now that you know what lies beneath, what would you choose to do for Antarctica? Would you let it, or leave it?
It is a complex subject, different actors, different positions, different ways of addressing the topic, and a question mark at the end. There is no one answer, of course. And it depends. Is open the discussion? Is open the controversy? So it's something that is under development. And it's something that you can experience in many, many different scientific areas. So the idea is to understand first, to make, create this visible, publicly inspectable space in order to make people understanding, and then find their own positioning, trying to reach the equilibrium they want to reach. That's another way to analyze. This is again about, these are other examples of maps, trying to understand how the scientific knowledge production evolves. So these are in time how different disciplines started dealing with the topic of global warming. So the first that started are geography, astronomy and astrophysics. Meteorology, for example, is stable. Through all the years, they've always been dealing with that topic. You have the latecomers, so urban studies, biology, nutrition and dietetics. They are only recently they started dealing with the topic of global warming. Then you have some picking disciplines, the stable ones, environmental sciences, of course, they have been always dealing with the topic. Then you have countries, different countries that started talking about the global warming. So Norway was very active in the beginning of the time frame we considered. Then they stopped, in a way, producing scientific knowledge on that. They restarted again. India was again active in a different way. Antarctica was always dealing with the topic, of course. And then this is a way also to see how the different countries were active in the production of scientific knowledge. Then you have different topics and how, it's another way to see other maps that represent the dynamics of the social construction of scientific knowledge. You can use social media, for example, and you can use this social media in order to understand, for example, what is the social perception of the different countries, for example. And you may know that if you go in China, Twitter is not, or Google is not the main device, so you have to use another device. And then we did an analysis together with our students, and that we analyzed the correspondence between hashtags and keywords and terms used to address global warming as a topic. So here you have Baidu News, here we have Google News, and the frequency of certain words. So in the diagonal you have all the common, let's say, words that appears with the same frequency in both the channels, the devices, and then on the other side you have a zoom. So there are words and terms that are only very frequent in Baidu, but they are not frequent in Google News. So Chinese Twitter accounts, they use different terms that are not used in Google in other countries. In the United States, you have terms and words that are less frequent in China, like, for example, Trump. Yeah, that's him. So you can compare, and we did the same with Twitter and the correspondent media. And again, you have also differences in the different media. So in Google and Baidu, the correspondence between terms goes in a certain way, while in Twitter and the correspondent Chinese device, some words are, the frequency of words is distributed in a different way. For example, Donald Trump is much more present in the Chinese version of Twitter than in Baidu. And probably it's because, is also tweeting about China, Donald Trump, some cases. So global warming was created by and for the Chinese. That's a new theory, new idea that is spread with retweeted by 28,000 users and liked by 17,000 users. Other maps can be built through Wikipedia. We developed, together with Sciences Po in Paris, a tool that is called Contropedia. So if you put an address of a page in Contropedia, you can see all the controversial links. So the more they are read, the more that part of the page is controversial. So it means that there is a discussion behind. So you can use it as a tool. If you put your scientific area, your scientific topic, it's a tool that is publicly available. So you can use it, you can put your topic and understand what are the controversial elements of the debate within your topic. Then you can have an analysis of, in that case, for example, her scientific opinion on climate change are the most controversial part of the text of the Wikipedia page. Then what we do, so most of these maps are for experts or for researchers, for scholars, and so sometimes we try, being communication designers, also to bring this cartography, these maps, also towards a broader public. That's what we did, for example, at the end of the European-funded project I was mentioning. When eMaps finished, the electronic maps for assist public science project finished, we released a website that is already online, that is still online, that you can, it was meant to bring this climate change issue in the hands of people. I mean, the website presents the results of the EU research project eMaps, as well as its process, an experiment to use computation and visualization to harness the increasing availability of digital data and mobilize it for public debate. That was the mission of that website. There was the challenge of public engagement was there. So we made a lot of maps, a lot of cartography of controversy, and then we decided we wanted to bring this knowledge in the hands of public actors, citizens also. Maybe I can show you, can give a sense of this website, so you can maybe judge yourself if we succeeded or not. So actually this is the platform. You have some stories and some maps, actually are visualizations of debates around climate change. So a reader, a user of the web can fall into this web page and maybe check one of the stories. Climate adaptation in Bangladesh, a case study. So do you think this is something that is good, is a good example of engaging the public with the controversy of climate change? Do you like it? Do you think you will visit, if you are interested in climate change, these websites? Actually, I made this question to someone that works exactly in that domain. He's a friend of ours. And I asked to that person, what do you think? Do you think we did a good job in engaging the public with the controversy on climate change with this website? And I'll tell you the answer. Of course, if our project was about science and was funded by Science and Society, so we had to engage the public in some way. As I mentioned, it was written in the website. So we want to mobilize all the research we have done for public debate. So I asked, as I said, to a friend. Actually, this friend is the director of the infographics, the infographics department of Scientific American. Is one of the most important scientific popular journals and magazines in the United States. And I asked to Jan, that's the name, what do you think? Do you think we did a good job? So that's the answer. The elegant graphics beg for exploration. That's good. But the very academic text blocks, lots of jargon, act like speed bumps. So that's what she said. I mean, the charts are beautiful, they are maybe attractive, but then the text is too much and written in a way that cannot be understood. Might be okay, depending upon intended audience, but if goal is to engage more people, non-specialists, it's a little intimidating. And we are designers, communication designers. What it means? Yeah, we did a lot of work. We tried. It's difficult. So to engage the public, even for a communication designer, is not easy. Because we tend always, being also researchers and scientists, to use our language, our way of addressing the topic. Is not easy. She knows that because she works for Scientific American. They have this goal. They have the goal to bring scientific knowledge towards the public. We tried a second time with a kind of a spin-off project with the World Health Organization. The department we worked with is the reproductive health and research, and the topic was about family planning. Do you think there is a controversy on family planning? What means family planning? That I can decide how many kids I want to have. Do you think there is a controversy around it? Yes, there is. It's a scientific topic. There is science behind it. This is science. But there are some actors that say there is no controversy, but because, of course, they have a position. The fact that they say that there is no controversy means that there is a controversy. These actors, look at this actor. Can you read the name? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Actually, is the biggest non-public funder of projects that goes in that direction. They are investing billions of dollars in family planning, meaning that they support family planning. Bringing, for example, contraceptives in Africa and other countries or continents. They are playing a big role, having big money in that controversy. So that's why Melinda Gates, that claims to be a very Catholic person, has to go in the media and say, why, being you a Catholic person, are you supporting these causes through your activity? Then again, you have websites like this one, no controversy in contraceptives. So you have very well-positioned actors. Then if you go in Wikipedia with the tools that I showed to you before, then you can see the discussions behind. If you go to the abortion page, for example, in Italian, in other language, you see a huge controversy, huge debate around it. And again, we can map it. Using the visualization tools we have, we can make a map of these debates and how they evolve in time. This is the editing history of one page. This is the abortion page. So you can see how it evolves. And these are they are called war edits. So people that are deleting and adding and deleting and adding. And then it comes, they had to protect the page to stop people fighting, behind the page. This is construction of collective knowledge about this topic. So we tried, for example, in Italy to map the position of the different media actors and the website also related to that. And you can recognize maybe some of the... So if you go to certain websites, you can easily position themselves as pro-life, meaning against the choice. And then you have... But what is more important is not maybe the individual positioning. So they don't share any link. So they are distant. They don't speak each other. But what is interesting is in the middle, because the neutral part is evolving in time towards the right. That's something that you can see if you analyze in time the relationship between the websites. You see where they are going Another experiment we did, again, in order to reconstruct the dynamics and for the WHO, they asked us to analyze a very specific topic, that is cesarean section. You know what it means? Maybe the ladies. Cesarean section is a surgery intervention actually, and it's growing a lot, especially in certain countries and in certain regions in countries. In Italy, there is a huge difference between North, for example, and South, in terms of the percentage of moms that choose to be to get this intervention. So, WHO says in their directives that there is a physiological, let's say, percentage that is something around 17%. And in some regions you have 70, not 17. And everywhere, more or less in Europe, we are above this. So they say, why people do something different from what we say? I mean, we are policymakers. Countries, they have to get our policies and then act accordingly. Why they don't do that? So we made a try. We analyzed all the discussions between mothers in a social media platform, actually a website. We went into the blog. It's one of the biggest female, let's say, platforms in Europe. They have different websites in different places. I mean, in Italy it's called Al Femminile. And we analyzed all the conversations. And we found very interesting discussions and topics and terms that moms were sharing. Among them, one of the most important was pain on one side, and on the other side was something related to legal issues. But that's not maybe the most interesting part for WHO. We made also the analysis of all the websites dealing with the topic of health and reproduction in order to search what was the exact position of WHO. That's what we got. If you take all these topics that has to do with the scientific body of knowledge we are investigating, and then you analyze how strong are the single websites that talks about all these issues, and then you search for WHO. Can you see WHO? That's where it is. It's disconnected from most of the, well, look at the center. You have, this is a .org website. This is .org. Then you have a commercial. So you have, this is the center. This is where you have the strongest actors. WHO is very close to that site and well disconnected from all the rest. People don't look at that. I mean, they don't speak with them. If they do, they use a different language. We made also an analysis of the language that people use when they speak about certain topics. And actors, they use a different language. The language changes over time. And so these are some of the maps and the analysis. You can use even pictures. Do you think that the perception of cesarean section, for example, or abortion is the same in different countries? Maybe you can use pictures and to see that. This is how Italy perceives, in a way, the topic of cesarean section. If you go on the web and search for cesarean section and the pictures that come up, then you see, look at how pink it is. If you look at France, it's less pink. You have this very technical representation of the moment of the delivery. That is something that doesn't exist in Italy. You have a totally different, in Italy you have a lot of moms with pink, it's beautiful, it's something soft. In France it's more technical in a way. You can have different perceptions in different places. So you can use this tool, these methods, these maps, also to analyze what is the perception. And within this frame, we made also a very strange experiment. So we scraped for all the pictures with moms related to cesarean section, and we created, overposing all these pictures, we created something like the ideal face of the mom that is dealing with this issue in the different countries. Of course, it's more art than an analytical tool. And then again, we created a website in order to try to bring this scientific knowledge in the hands of the public. So trying to engage the public. And what we discovered, the more we tried to bring these maps, this cartography of controversy in the hands of non-experts, the more we realized how powerful these visualizations could be, but at the same time, what is the responsibility of bringing this visualization in the hands of the actors of the controversy. We started, in some cases, even co-designing these maps. So we're really inviting some of the actors in the process of designing these maps, trying to understand the actors and the relationship between them. And then we shared with them some of the maps we were drawing. So what you see in this table, you see some of the charts that we are used to create in these occasions. And then these are ladies that take care of elderly people, because we were dealing with the elderly people controversy. So as people get old, I mean, the number of people, elderly people is growing a lot, and this could be, of course, a problem. And the issue, we tried to share these maps of the controversy of the different actors and the different relationships and the dynamics of negotiation with them. And we noticed some very positive feedbacks, so they were really wanting and engaged by this visualization, but at the same time we discovered some of the limits. So they really focused on the activity on the map. So we found, for example, a very typical activity. So this finger that was pointing in all the charts is something that was very, very common. So that's why we decided after, for example, to have interactive visualization, because they wanted to know more. That's something that was very, very clear. So they wanted to understand more, and the graph itself was not enough. So they wanted to explore. So that's something that we learned. And so we tried to engage really physically. They became really, as we said in the beginning of the course, strategic partners. Because we didn't only share the knowledge with them, we invited them in the creation of these maps. So we shared with them the phase of the hypothesis creation, also sketching, discussing the mock-ups with them, collecting data, and in the analysis we didn't get any involvement actually. And dissemination was something that we shared also. But what we, and this is probably most important, is the final message, what we understood is that when you draw this map and you bring this map to the actors, in a way you are changing their understanding of the phenomenon and their positioning. And this is something that is common to every map. Every map is a kind of a political tool, a political device. As soon as you map a territory and you bring this representation to someone, to the public, you change, you affect the perception of that territory, and then you change, in a way, the position. You could change the position and the perception of that territory. And that's what happens. In a way, it's necessary, because you cannot have, you cannot have a public for your controversy if you don't have a map. But as soon as you have a map, I mean, you are also, in a way, affecting the perception of this topic. So we designed maps for the public, but as soon as we did it, we were also designing, in a way, shaping the public for the maps. So also the public, not only the maps, also the public is a kind of a construction that you construct with the communication devices that you share with them. And it leads to the final message that public engagement is needed. I think we spent different lectures on that, different hours, trying to push this idea. Is needed is something that is mandatory in some cases. European Union is claiming for that every day in every single funded project, but it brings a lot also of responsibility. So it's something that we want you to do, but without knowing the responsibility behind it, I think it could be even dangerous. So as I said, it's like with normal cartography. If you want your map, your representation of the scientific knowledge you built, your communication to be successful, you have to understand and feel this responsibility, the fact that the communication you produce, the device you share, the message you bring will shape the public and their perception, their positioning even on the issue and the topic. So with this focus on this responsibility, I think we can close this going public engagement with communication, with research and science course. And I think you now will have, I hope, you will have a different perception of the work you are doing and the importance of the relationship with the world outside. So not only the community of your peers, but the people that are outside. And I hope also that is a chance, I had a chance, that was the Lateral agenda, to introduce what communication design and designers can do for you if in the future you may want to bring your knowledge, your scientific knowledge, and the processes you put in place on the public domain. So I think we can work together on that, and I think we can share this responsibility. Thank you.